Good. Well, and same as last time, if you have any good questions, start to be ready with them. I will have an opening question, and then hopefully there will be some questions from the floor as well. I would like to start with the extended producer responsibility, and actually direct the question to you at Virkik, because I was wondering if we will start to see that the responsibility will be that they will have the responsibility to take it back. A lot of that is going to go through your members somehow. So what kind of opportunity, or what's your take on an increasing number of products that has to go back somehow? What kind of role and what kind of opportunity do you see that has, or your members have? I think I would like to start there.
I think all...
Should be on. Is it on?
Do you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. I think we have all kind of opinions. Somebody would say no, somebody would say yes, depending on where they are in the transition, I would say. But as mentioned earlier today, to create a system that is working well, you need to take care of the whole system, because you can produce something that give an effect so the competition is not equal. And our members will be very interesting in to have a competition on equal terms. Mm-hmm. So if you look at, there has been a debate in Norway about 350 kroners, because you could import without paying VAT in Norway. And at the same time we sent money to China, so they could ship stuff over to us, and we was paying for the transport. It was crazy in a way. So on equal terms, if you create a system on equal terms, and you could say something about how could they adapt their business model, so you could have that kind of a transformation, I think they will be interested in this. But I think among my members, somebody is ready for doing more, and somebody is still lagging behind.
Of course, yeah. A bit of a follow-up question, I guess, because we were wondering, what's an extended producer responsibility going to look like when we have this shift from product to service that you also mentioned? So when we stop sell close, does that make the whole idea of extended producer responsibility obsolete, or what's this going to be like? With this massive growth in service, what's the role of the ERP?
I think the base for the producer responsibility is interesting, because the politician is discussing about producer responsibility for 40, 50 years, and then have to rename it in hope that they manage to achieve something. But extended producer responsibility is rather obvious. You have to take the responsibility regarding the design, and then you'll sell the product. And I also think that the retailer, the people that sell the product, they have to be in the circular economy model as well. But in the future, you have to think, if you are selling a tourist attraction or if you are giving some other service, you have to look into total value chain and actually take the responsibility, or else you won't be able to compete in the future. But the problem today is that the environmental impact for the service or the product are not included in the product at the first time.
Yeah.
And that they have to work with. And that's interesting, because they did that with the bot and can in Norway, early 90s. And now we see that other politicians also look into that solution. But we have to do something with the environmental cost when you produce the service or the product.
Yeah.
Just a comment on his members, because we have a lot of small shops in Norway. All of them are members. They take back the empties they are used in. And when we ask them, they are really pleased, because they feel that this is actually something they have to do. They feel that this is a good service towards their consumer. So we also see that it's a competitive advantage when they have the deposit system and they work with a positive way on that. So I think more and more of the retailer will also look into different solutions, and the producer as well. Yeah.
Okay. Perhaps to the two of you, I don't know who will be answering. I was just wondering, what you call for here is also that we do the calculations on the service side. Is your models fit for service as well, or is it mainly for for products? And then we'll take a question from the floor after that.
Yeah, the input-output approach, the economy-wide approach, has all the industries in it. So we can actually see what kind of services the industries consume, and what kind of services the final consumers, like households or government, also consume services. So our models can definitely also look at services, not only at the processing industry or the plastics industry that I was talking about, but we take into effect all the indirect effects along the supply chains as well. Yes.
So you're ready when these members come and ask, as you just suggested. That's
Course,
excellent.
always.
You're always ready, of course, yeah. Okay, do we have somebody on the floor who has a question?
Yeah.
And again, please, stand up and name and short
My name
question.
is Letícia Nogueira. I'm from Norland Research Institute. And I have a question about this deposit scheme. If it seemed from your talk that it's very important in the case of Norway that there was a proactive movement from industry in establishing this. But in cases where you don't have this, and people always cite this punt scheme as a benchmark, what advice would you give? And I'm thinking specifically, for instance, on deposit of gear that fishermen use. That has been appearing in my research as something important, and everyone talks about it, but no one wants to be the first. So what would you advise in that regard?
In my opinion, you should put deposit on all the fishing net. That will be easy. It's very simple to set up a deposit system for a fishing net. The experience when we have a lot of visitors from abroad, politicians especially, when we show them this model, it's interesting because all of them say, this is a no-brainer. I should love to enforce this environmental cost model. We even had a senator from California. They have a deposit system. It's state-owned, very costly, not efficient. And he said, I would like to establish this cost model, but I'm not sure if I dare to do it. And that's the problem today. So as you stated, we are working slow in Norway, but they are also working slow in the Western country because we are missing the good political decision. But luckily now, with the new EU target, 90% collection rate, 30% recycling content, that's really boosted the focus from the producer because they are afraid that if they don't do anything with the plastic very quickly, then the politician in EU, they will set up new target or even make more strict regulation. So EU is moving forward now and is going to go rather rapidly. So that's good.
Yeah. You had a comment as well, Ingmar?
Yeah, because somebody mentioned trust, and I think the success when it comes to the system in Norway, I think when the retailers are owners in the solution. And in Virke we have now also a fund, because there was a discussion about putting a fee on the plastic bag from the government. And then the industry come together and said, okay, we are putting up a plastic fund, and we're using the money to reduce the plastic waste. And this is free, but everybody was agreed that if the industry does it, it's much better to be on board. And then I think that is also a key, to do solutions together with the industry and use the trust part, because the trust part in all the Nordic countries, but even maybe most in Norway then, when we do solutions like this, to use the trust to build solutions that works.
Yeah, interesting. Do we have another question? Because otherwise I have one in between while you're thinking. Okay, then, because I think we also heard, especially in the beginning of the day, the call for action. We need to do something. And then made me think, while the two of you were presenting, what's really best? Is that to get started and, stumble a bit, learning something, but action mode, starting to create some impact? Or is it really that sort of more thorough analysis that, of course, cost time and cost money, and when you're thinking about whether or not to move on this, are you ready for that? So what's sort of the trade-off? What's best? Is it action or thorough analysis?
So I can see the want or need to just do something now, and to just kind of recklessly go towards something and hope that it works out and to stumble along the way. I do absolutely see that could be very tempting. But we have to understand that when we build infrastructure and we put a lot of money and funding towards building infrastructure, we lock ourselves into specific technologies and specific way of handling resources. So there's a huge risk that if we just run towards the circular economy blindly without really understanding the environmental impacts or the resource impacts, social impacts as well, business impacts, include you guys, that we could run into a lot of problems that will create a lot of momentum that's hard to slow down and say, oh, we did something wrong here, let's reverse and go backwards. It's much more difficult to go backwards than it is to just design something that works from the start. I think you said that as well.
It is indeed, but I mean, it's also, I think it's really a complicated question actually,
Yeah.
because we also need the level of maturity. And we talk about speed, and we need to speed up. And if everybody who wants to get into action says, okay, we start by a 1-year analysis, that might sort of deflate a bit of the energy as well. So I think it's actually a bit tricky, especially at a company level, because you want to make a business case out of this. So yeah. So I'm not necessarily expecting that we have sort of a clear answer, yes, but just wanted to sort of put up the dilemma, I guess.
This is interesting discussion. Just have a comment. When I've been in Brussels, it's interesting because all big companies, they have the representative to work towards the politician in Belgium or in Brussels. And that goes for all country. The industry is very good at taking contact to the politician and tell them everything that's not possible. The interesting part with the environmental cost model in Norway, when they decided this is the cost, do whatever you like, then the industry focus, how can we make an efficient solution? So I think that's, you have to look into good political decision, and then the industry will look for facts. They will dive into this, but they will do it with a total different speed that they do today. But still they focus on all the problem and try to get away and tell the politician, no, this is difficult, it's costly, because the politician, they would like to point out you should do like this and this and this. And then you have the danger that you actually go in the wrong direction. So you try to go up a level and tell them, okay, this is the environmental impact, this is the problem we should solve, and then find some incentives so the industry can really work in the right direction.
When a company like HM states that in 2030 they should recycle all the clothes that they sell, and in 2040 they should be carbon neutral, they don't know how they should do it, but they state it very clearly. And that is a value chain going around the globe. And I think that is interesting because I think we need action in combination with researchers trying to learn, because if we are doing all the analysis before we do something, I don't think we will move. So we have to do both and learn during the journey. But we also have to include the government, the framework condition, and I think that we should focus much more on the business, the whole business sector, not only the industry, because we have been into the industry for a long time. The industry is doing well in many ways and have done a lot. We should focus on the whole business society, because that is part of the solution, together with researchers, but also the government.
I think you're pointing to something here saying that we have the sort of overall target, that's, as you say, being circular or carbon neutral, or pick any of the environmental goals or whatever. But that's sort of that's might be decisive, and then start doing something, and then comes analysis. But if we want to speed up, but still make the right kind of decisions, what's the best tool? I mean, also if we look back to this morning when we heard from Skive about building trust and doing together, and so what's sort of the right level? How do we move forward as fast as possible? What's the best advice either for business leaders or for politicians? Because it's definitely not an either or, but what's the third way perhaps? What's the better way? What's the faster but right way of making choices? What do you think?
I mean, maybe this sounds a little bit kumbaya, but I think that we could definitely start to bridge some of the divide between research policy and industry and businesses. I think that would be maybe the most efficient route forward, that we're not working all in isolation, doing kind of our own thing, because I think that's a lot of the way we've been working in the past, where we analyze things in the past and pick out problems and then send that to policymakers, and then policymakers come downwards and say businesses do something else. It'd be much more efficient if we just worked together from the start, and researchers tried to more understand the needs of businesses.
Who can have that role of facilitating that? Because I really agree on where you're heading now.
Yeah.
But who can take on the role of facilitating that dialogue? You can. Amazing. Here's the guy who can do it. I like it. All power to this man. He will do it.
But I think I have a point, because today, all in this room, we understand circular economy. But if it went down 5 minutes, nobody understood it. So I think the first point is to look to other countries that are doing something, to try to see, okay, are they doing something that maybe we could learn of? Not saying that we are behind, but look to them and try to learn. That is number one. And number two is more people has to engage to understand circular economy, because the education part of this is too low. If more people understand this, it is possible for organizations like us and others to participate in the debate, how can we make solutions? So I think this education part to understand circular economy and what Netherlands has done is interesting, because their people are more into it. And I think we should have that kind of movement, not only researchers as industry, but also, ordinary people.
Ordinary people. I think we'll end there, because the ordinary people is also, I guess, a big part of the whole market and the reason for doing it and everything. So perhaps it's actually a good place to end. So should we give them a round of applause, please? And then, of course, for you guys as well, a little something from the organizers. And I don't know if you heard it from this morning, but this is the reusable plastic bag for when you go into the supermarket and shop your groceries. So it's the bag within the bag. And you, of course, know it, because all your members already do this, of course. But if not, then you can go home and show this is the way forward. All right? Thank you so much for your time and your input.